When the final battle came, Loki chose a side, and the world fell. Long before the first flames of Ragnarok touched the horizon, the gods of Asgard were aware of the inevitable, whispered warnings that had been passed down for generations, that a day would come when the sky would split open with fire, when the oceans would rise and swallow the lands, and when the golden halls of the gods would tremble under the might of monsters and men alike. And at the center of this prophecy stood Loki, the trickster, the deceiver, whose cunning and chaos were foretold to play a role so pivotal that neither gods nor mortals could escape its consequences. For it was said that he would break free from his chains, gather the giants and monsters that had long been imprisoned or exiled, and lead them against the very heavens that had once sheltered him. And even as Odin, wise and all-seeing, prepared his warriors, and Thor sharpened Mjolnir for the battles to come, there lingered a quiet, chilling unease, the sense that Loki's mind, dark and brilliant, would not be swayed by loyalty or compassion, and that the trickster's path would inevitably converge with the end of days.
Unveil the legends.
Bound and punished for his innumerable betrayals, Loki had suffered in silence for what seemed like an eternity, the venom dripping upon him in a slow, unending torment, yet even in chains. His mind was never idle, and in the shadows, he whispered, he schemed, he observed the vulnerabilities of his captors, calculating the exact moment to strike, until finally, as the signs of Ragnarok began to manifest, the sun dimmed, the earth shook, and the wolves of Fenrir stirred, Loki seized his opportunity, breaking free from his bonds with a cunning born of centuries, and he vanished into the wilds where the giants, long resentful of the gods' dominion and fearful of their power, awaited their leader, uncertain, wary, yet drawn by the promise of vengeance and the brilliance of Loki's strategy. And when he emerged before them, they saw not a prisoner or a traitor, but a commander who could unite their fractured legions, and they followed him willingly into the chaos, knowing that with Loki's mind guiding them, the long-awaited reckoning would finally come. And as the earth trembled beneath their march, the air itself seemed to shiver with anticipation, for the time of reckoning was no longer a distant prophecy. It was upon them. As the first light of a blood-red sun streaked across the horizon, the fields of Vigrid stretched before the gods, a desolate and foreboding plain where destiny would unfold with merciless precision. And there, on that fateful battlefield, Loki stood at the forefront of the giants, his presence a symbol of betrayal and inevitability, while Aiden, resolute and burdened with foresight, rallied the warriors of Asgard, calling upon the Einherjar, the fallen heroes who had trained for this singular purpose. Yet even their courage could not quell the terror that emanated from Loki, whose every step seemed to taunt the heavens. And the clash began with a deafening roar, the ground quaking under the charge of beasts and gods alike. And Loki moved with lethal grace, striking where defenses were weakest, guiding the giants with precision, his laughter echoing like a chilling wind across the battlefield. And as Heimdall, the watchful guardian, confronted him, the two exchanged a series of blows that seemed to shake the very fabric of reality. Heimdall's sword against Loki's cunning maneuvers, each strike carrying the weight of history and prophecy, until it became clear that Loki's role was not merely to fight, but to ensure the collapse of order itself. With each swing of Mjolnir, each clash of sword and shield, and each monstrous roar that tore through the skies, the world itself began to fracture, mountains crumbled, rivers boiled, and the oceans surged to reclaim the lands. Yet even as Thor fought bravely against the serpent Jarmungandr and Odin faced Fenrir in a battle that shook the heavens, Loki moved like a shadow of inevitability, ensuring that every act of courage met its counter in destruction. For the trickster understood that victory for the gods would mean nothing if chaos was not allowed to reign, and so he guided the giants and beasts with meticulous strategy, sowing fear and despair, breaking alliances, and exposing weaknesses, until the final moments arrived when the battlefield itself seemed to groan under the weight of destiny. And in that instant, as Odin fell to Fenrir, Thor and Jormungandr struck each other down in mutual annihilation, and Heimdall and Loki finally met in their destined confrontation. The end had come, and the cosmos trembled under the realization that Loki's betrayal, foretold but inevitable, had ushered in the destruction of worlds, not merely through strength or force, but through the brilliance of chaos incarnate, leaving nothing untouched by the consequences of his cunning and the inevitability of fate. When the dust settled and the fires of Ragnarok burned low, the remnants of what had been the golden halls of Asgard lay in ruins, twisted and shattered, the surviving gods and heroes scattered in mourning. And yet even amid the devastation, Loki's presence remained, a reminder that the end of one age had merely heralded the beginning of another, for chaos, cunning, and unpredictability could never truly be destroyed. And though some whispered that he had been evil, others wondered if he had simply fulfilled the role that destiny had demanded, that without his actions the cycles of power, rebellion, and rebirth would never have occurred. And as the world slowly began to heal, reshaping itself from the ashes of what had been, the memory of Loki's choices lingered in the minds of mortals and gods alike, a story of betrayal and inevitability, of cunning that altered the fate of all existence. And in the silence, one could almost hear his voice echoing across the new lands, a whisper of warning, a challenge to those who would ever think the world was safe from the designs of a trickster. And so we leave Loki at the end of days, a god who chose a side, brought the world to ruin, yet in doing so reminded us all that chaos, when wielded with purpose and intellect, shapes destiny in ways that even the mightiest cannot foresee. And that was Loki at Ragnarok, the god whose betrayal did not just change the battle, but ended the world itself, leaving a story that will echo for eternity, reminding us that some forces once set free can never be contained,